Good day, ma'am. I am L'Oreal Joy Digniar, BS HM2A. Today, I am going to discuss all about biodiversity. So what is biodiversity? Biodiversity refers to all species living things on Earth or in a specific ecosystem. The term biodiversity refers to the variety of living organisms. So biodiversity brings together the different species and forms of life, animals, plants, etymological and other, and their variability, that is to say, their dynamics of evolution in their ecosystem. Traditionally, there are three levels of biodiversity: the genetic biodiversity, species diversity, and ecosystem diversity. But what does each of these levels really mean? So the genetic diversity is about the diversity of genes existing in the living world. Between and within different species, there are different genes and different expressions of genes, and this genetic variability contributes to the multiplicity of life forms, physical, biological characters, and depending on the interaction with the environment phenotypes. So, the species diversity, we speak of species to describe the diversity of living species. So there are millions of living species on Earth. They're all different and divided into groups, depending on their specification, like insects, animals, plants, and fungi, and so on. So species diversity is often separated into two categories. The intraspecific diversity refers to the genetic variation of individuals and population of the same species. The human having while or black skin, blonde or brown hair, blue or green eyes is one of the many examples of intraspecific biodiversity. The second one is the species diversity. On the contrary, interspecies of biodiversity refers to the diversity of living species among themselves by their numbers, their nature, and their relative importance. Let's say humans for sapiens, a species with currently 7.7 billion organisms, have a higher diversity than, to, for instance, the low number of African elephants that are currently facing extinctions. So the third biodiversity is the ecosystem biodiversity. Refers to the variety of ecosystem. So by their nature and number, where living species interact with their environment and with each other. For examples, on Earth, there are different ecosystems. So each with their specifics, like deserts, oceans, lakes, plants, or forests, and even within these ecosystems, there are species details like cold or hot, deserts, boreal or tropical forests, warm or cold coastal regions. Each ecosystem has its own peculiarities, species, and ways of functioning. At each level and between them, interaction is a primordial idea that emphasizes a constantly evolving reality. In fact, biodiversity is not limited to the static inventory of living species at a given moment. The system of biodiversity and its interaction applies to all of organisms like plants, animals, bacteria, and others, and the ecosystem of which they're part and in which they interact. So, biodiversity danger, the impact of human activities and biodiversity loss. It was in the late 1980s that the concept of biodiversity became a major concern. So this attention followed the increasingly obvious recognition of how human activities had been responsible for the degradation, fragmentation, and destruction of ecosystems and their biodiversity. Indeed, humans have been contributing to the disappearance of 60% of the world's species since 1970, not only because of our industrial economics or urban activities, but also because of how they altogether contribute to climate change and its extreme events. So, at the 1992 Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro, an essential step towards the preservation of biodiversity has taken. Biodiversity was acknowledged as a crucial part of the Sustainable Development Agenda. Therefore, in the Convention on Biological Diversity Treaty, the signatory nations committed to protecting the diversity of life and restoring already degraded ecosystems. Biodiversity loss, what are the consequences? So what are the consequences? The gradual decline in biodiversity. We are even talking about the extinction of many species today, has many consequences for humankind. For example, the disappearance of certain pollinating insects such as butterflies or bees makes some agricultural productions more complicated. For instance, bees are very important pollinators of food crops, and without them, the spread of biodiversity loses reach. So the disappearance of some species can disrupt ecosystem and make them more fragile. So how can we protect our biodiversity? Protecting biodiversity is a very complex task because of most of humans' actions have a negative effect on ecosystems by weakening them. For instance, human activities generate pollution that affects living species. Deforestation destroys the habitat of many animals, insects, and plants. So, why should we care about our biodiversity? So, here's the answer. Biodiversity indicates the health of an ecosystem. Having biodiversity improves the health of Earth. It shows it is thriving and healthy ecosystem. Clean our water, purify our air, maintain our soil, regulate the climate, recycle nutrients, and provide us with food. Biodiversity provides raw materials and resources for medicines and other purposes. The loss of biodiversity has an effect on humans as we are part of the biodiversity. So the biodiversity is the foundation of our economy and our well-being. So most biodiversity resources are consumed by humans. So it is their primary responsibility to preserve and protect biodiversity, to protect the earth, the richness of the species, the ecosystem, the environment, and the sustainable growth of life on earth is important. So once again, I am L'Oreal Joy Dimyar from BASHM 2A. Thank you, keep safe, and God bless.